This is Willpower.
Welcome to another episode of Willpower Podcast. This one's a special one because I'm in Los Angeles. My good friend, Nyesha Arrington.
The crowd goes wild.
The crowd goes wild. We just get to lean into life and times of food that hugs your soul. And I will just, and we have Blue Ginger here with us, which is so amazing.
Okay, little nappy poo, my
Little
little
doggy.
Frenchie, my roll dog.
Yeah. And so I just want to start by saying, not only do I love you to the moon and back and feel like we've had all these experiences together. I was driving here from Palm Springs thinking about how the entire barbecue went aflame at the retreat that we did and how you handled it like a damn champion, as well as just a little bit of the background and the way I get to vicariously live through all of your, just everything, the grounded, centered, amazing woman you are, as well as the kick-ass chef that you are, because my dad did restaurant industry work for so long and I worked in that scene. And yeah, like watching the arc of all of it from the times when restaurant tourism felt so different, and how what we're going to talk about today a lot around the wellness space, like, you know, keeping a wellness mindset while you're in not only being a restaurateur and a chef, but while you're keeping the schedule that you're currently keeping, which is amazing and insane. And I'm sure you're super grateful. So we'll talk about all of that. But I just, from the perspective, the one thing I wanted to open with you is I grew up in a household where first, probably from the age of 7 to the age of 15, 16, my parents were split and we had a lot of Vietnamese in the family. And I got made fun of with a lot of other kids in school, as kids do to each other, because I say I learned to eat with chopsticks before I learned to eat with a fork. Because this crazy, in my mind, cuisine was in the house. There was like Nook Mom, and I was like, what is going on? And all of this in the arena of being a child and thinking, am I ever going to get meatloaf? And now I look back at it and I think, thank God that was the scenario, because I got this cross-culturalism that like a typical, you know, a split family, white, middle America chick wouldn't have probably gotten, even though I got my chops busted for it. And I think that there's something about that growing up with like a interesting palate that made me more of an enthusiast or a foodie. And I just want you to kind of talk about your experience of some of that, because I know that your roots are diverse and rich in all of this. And you've had so many experiences even up until now globally. So how does that sort of global landscape, how's it affecting you across the board now?
Yeah, I think you really nailed a few key points in how I'm sort of wired, and what I value for sure is a lot centered around experiences. Like I'm so here for the human experience, you know, and in that subject has so many different facets. And I absolutely adore Vietnamese cuisine. What is that, like a remarriage situation? How was that like? I didn't know that you were.
Like, the questions come back at me. No, but the reality is this is a great question, because it feels like, well, why would that show up?
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with that.
My mom was an ESL teacher. And the real short story is she was teaching in a pretty roughneck neighborhood, school district. And it was when this big influx of Vietnamese was coming in. So they needed to escape the country, various political reasons, et cetera. And the state was funding families. They were basically giving families a check if you took a Vietnamese refugee. And don't want to have any judgment on the families, but some of the rough and tumble families who are quite poor in the area were like, oh, anything to get a check from the government, we'll take a student, we'll turn our broom closet into a bedroom for them, we'll do whatever. And a lot of these students were not getting well fed. They were getting like, you know, Twinkies and things and left for them, and maybe like soft drinks or just whatever's in the house, not getting well fed. And my mom, I mean, I'm sure this wouldn't fly nowadays, but my mother was nice enough, sweet enough, like saying, hey, listen, there's some rules. I'm your ESL, your English as a second language teacher. And the rules are, if you're hungry, you can come to our table and eat. But I have 2 daughters, and you will be polite, and you will show up early, and you will help cook, and you will stay to do the dishes. And there were nights that we had, 6, 8 students over, and it was like, I think probably the first 2 times my mom tried to cook, and then immediately so many of them had cooked in kitchens with their families in Vietnam, and this collective that it was a way for them to sort of not only bond with each other, but like show my mom and contribute. And then I just got to be like in the arena of that. So it was wild, really wild.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing the insight. I hadn't known that. I mean, all the years we've known each other, I was like, this is very interesting. So I was curious where that Vietnamese influence came from. Yeah, similarly, like, growing up, I'd go to my grandmother's house, as you know, is a Korean immigrant. And, I'm third generation Angelino. All of my parents, my grandparents, on both sides of the family are from Los Angeles, but on my mom's side, by way of Korea, and on my dad's side, Mississippi roots. So, very sort of diverse backgrounds, depending on the household I was in, whichever weekend. So I just remember the spices, the formidable scents, the kimchis, the octopuses, the food felt very lively when I'd go to my grandparents' house because it was so, it wasn't like something I'd get at school. It wasn't something that my mom was cooking every day. My mom cooked very standard American cuisine, we'd have taco night, we'd have meatloaf night, just, basic weeknight food. But I remember going to my grandmother's house and always having these like incredible experience, and she would pull me into the kitchen every single opportunity that she had. And so, I kind of jokingly say that I've been like training for my profession now, which is a chef, all of my life, since I was 5 years old, which is kind of true. I was peeling garlic and blanching vegetables with her at a very, very early age. And I remember like loving it, like it didn't feel like a chore. Whereas, and it just felt second nature to me. And I didn't realize it until I was like, talking with my sister and being like, oh yeah, didn't you love that? She's like, no, I hate this. And I'm like, oh, this is something that's just natural. Yeah. And so all of my life, I continued to do that. I'd play restaurant, I'd had my friends over, and I'd always make them soups because I think, I didn't have the like data to process as a kid, as an adolescent kid, why I would make the soups. But looking back, I think that soups are very nourishing. I think they're very wholesome. There's a great value add. They go a long way. You can feed a group. And so I'd always make my little friends like soup. And so, graduated high school and decided, hey, I think I'll take this cooking thing seriously. And, Kristen, that has taken me gratefully, luckily, around the world. It really, and there's been a lot of experience in that, personal experience, growth experience, through coming up in fine dining kitchens, through, in the early 2000s, through living overseas in 2008 for the first time in the Virgin Islands, and, not being afraid. And my parents and my sister, they're like, okay, like classic Nyesha, just out there in the world. And, and then coming back and opening my first restaurant and highly acclaimed and all the things, and then opening my second and closing both pre-pandemic, and up until where I met you and talked and shared a lot with you about my life experience. And specifically 2019 for me was, I would say, the catalyst for my mindset today. Really, truly, for the first time, I would say, looking up from that proverbial life cutting board, where I was like steadfast. I want to hone my craft. I want to learn everything. I want to get in every kitchen. I want to work for the best chefs. I want to go around the world. And 2019, I thought, like, I don't think I'm actually prioritizing. All that is great and I love it and I wouldn't change anything. But I don't think I was really prioritizing my wellness, of being spiritually, soulfully. I was completely expelling and not putting back in. So, when I found the workout group, all these amazing, powerful women, Kristen included, I was so inspired, and that for me has now taken me into, learning Olympic weightlifting, even approaching food in a completely different mindset of eating for fuel. And then at times, I don't know how this is going to sound, but like even at times prioritizing the eating for fuel over eating for pleasure. And I say that to say, I think before as a chef, when you're taught add cream, add the butter, put the oils, now knowing how different oils affect my body, doing the micronutrient tests, understanding what my DNA, what feeds my DNA well, and how I can have great output when I feel my best, when I get my sunlight, when I do the things. I am so grateful that I found this new pathway, And so
I think what you're speaking to is like, it's about when you say, we all have this thing that's like, oh, should I say this or not? But it's like, it's not about that eating for fuel versus eating for pleasure. It means that the eating for fuel part is not tasty or nourishing, right? It can be the challenging part, but that's the jam. Like
yes.
that's the
axis.
That's the axis.
Truly,
sure.
Absolutely. I mean, and I say that, I don't know how this is going to sound, because you'd think when you open your phone and you start scrolling on social media and you see that and the TikToks and the the reels of like people making this opulent, delicious food constantly, it's like, for me, right? Speak for myself. The reality is I can't really eat like that every day, because I know the toll that it takes on my body, composition wise, health wise, all the things. So truly, it has changed and reframed my mind, cooking delicious food for fuel. And sometimes that's just, a lot of it is sourcing, right? Like, was that animal happy when it died? However, woo that sounds, but like it is an energy transfer. And that's why I just had so much respect when you did the retreat. Like you valued that and we were speaking the same language. I'm applying creative technique and skill, and so is the farmer, the rancher, the growers, right? Of this food. And then we bring that together. We were talking about sourcing and how important that was when we were creating the menu. And then all of these amazing women getting to experience that. Like that was a core memory for me, being able to be a part of that.
Yeah. It was so interesting for me because I thought, you're the roll up to a retreat and all the work that goes in, and from the menu to the activation and everything, and having women, it was sort of like the first big one I was lead producing, where we're all staying in a house together. There's some nerves that go along with that, right? And
100%.
I thought, I'm not going to have many tears this weekend, and I'm going to be like this leader, and my alpha energy will come out, and even in my femininity. And the one time that I got all choked up was when I was talking about the cows.
Yes.
And it was like profoundly a period at the end of a sentence for me, like how you said that. It's like it's a pinnacle memory of that weekend, because it was like, like you're working in business and you do want to make a profit and you do want to make a good experience for people, and you have to put food on your own table, and these things take time and money, and the caterer even having that conversation with her, and this super well, is just the cost of food that is organic and well sourced is 2 or 3x any other food that you can get. And
100%.
The caterer said to me, and I was like, I'm wearing this as a feather in my cap, I don't care. And she's like, the last 2 years, people make me price out the organic, well-sourced menu all the time. She's like, you're the only person who's agreed to upgrade that budget. And I don't want to say it was painful. I was like, I'm standing, and I would like to say this to anyone who's listening to this. And it's like, we got to do what we can do with our budget to get the food we can in our systems and feed our children. And I get that. Let's get food in people and make it as nourishing as possible. And sometimes we have to cut corners. But to anyone who's working in the health space, I was like, how can I have this be part of my ethos, and then have a retreat where we're eating Doritos, or we're eating just like something that I would consider factory farmed, poorly cared for animal meat, like it just, and veggies and all the things.
Yeah.
And so, like I cried for the cows, like because I love them and wanted to honor them so much. And I drove to the, the cattle place and was like, hey, and I got in their big meat locker and was like, oh my God, cool.
I wanted to speak to that because it was such a powerful thing as a chef to see that. I was like, this is incredible. And then opening that, the product and look, you could just tell, like start to finish, it was such a careful, well, like articulated menu, from ethos to sourcing to it being received, and looking around the table with such joyful energy on that table, such intention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, let there be no mistake, people received it because you cooked the shit out of that meal. It was so good. Everyone was like, can we just do this every day? Can we not talk about any other health stuff? Can we just have food from Nyesha? And then just the testament to your managing. I don't want to say it's when I knew, because you and I weren't close when you had your restaurant, so I didn't get a chance to experience that. But it was like the moment that I knew you were like an ace in the kitchen was when the barbecue went up in a grease fire, which is, of course, no slight of your own. It was like an Airbnb that we had rented for the week, and no one had cleaned the grill. But I was like, oh, she's like a master chef, because it was like I didn't even see the whole thing exactly go down, but post, and the way that I saw you and the videographer was the only one there, just like do the dance of being like, yeah, we put it out, and you used like, I don't even know, $50 truffle salt that you had. You're like, that's the most expensive salt. And I just used it to put out the fire. It was like, I was like, oh, master chef in action right there.
Yeah, no, you have to be critical thinking. And, I think, and it's those small things that add up to being able to regulate your freaking system in those moments. What is the plan of action here? How can I properly think and articulate what is in my mind in the smallest amount of time, and I think those moments are important, but I think chefs are very like good at those things.
Oh, really? Really? Yeah. Like it's not, I don't think it's celebrated enough.
Yeah.
How much resilience. And if you go back to like the early days of where you were in kitchens, I'm sure that you felt like, not only is it my gut instinct, I want to say, is like probably a lot of alpha energy, right? And the ways that it's like directed, and it is a dance, and everybody's like no sleep till Brooklyn, or whatever. Like it's just some of the most hardest working people I've ever met in my life, or in either my dad's kitchen or in the restaurant, in the back of house in the restaurant.
Yes.
Forget waiting tables, which I love to do, or bartending, awesome. The back of house just makes everything run.
Yes.
And so the level of resiliency, it's like, I think I was listening to you talk on another podcast where you're like, yeah, ice baths. And I'm like always so fond, because I'm like, have all these pictures of you in the ice bath. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm, an ice bath queen. But that you built some of that resiliency in the kitchen, like you built that navigating. And I recently even had like a pan fire at the house I was cooking at, just my own stupidity. And I'm like, I'm in an ice bath all the time. Like, I'm going to be like navigating stress, no problem. But when a fire goes up and you're like, even though there was a hood and it was fine, I was like, I had that moment of pause. And it brought me right back to the house and the barbecue. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I need to like work on the fact that I can do ice and I can do some other things. But this preparing for living a good life and being resilient under stress is not just
falls out of the sky.
Take away the visual perspective, because it's going to come at you in all these different ways.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we're tested every day. Those small sort of micro moments that add up to really big expressions in life. And you were the first person that got me in the ice to help me sort of build that breath work, that framework around, the prioritizing of caring for our nervous system. It's very important. And that change in me in 2019, it's, it hasn't been a straight path, but, I started to understand, what am I putting in my body, and the basics. Am I getting proper sleep? Am I hydrated? And these things that you don't always have time to prioritize when you're cooking for 200 people. You just care about making sure that you've butchered enough chickens for the night, and whatnot.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of those pieces.
Ginger agrees.
The health and well-being. So the trajectory of the last few years, I think there's two pieces of it. The first question I want to ask is just for there will be people that listen to this that are less interested in my perspective on biohacking and well-being in some ways, and there will be people who really listen to this who are up and coming in the culinary world. And I think I just want you to speak a little bit to being an entrepreneur can be a challenge, of course, and has its challenging moments, and also has a lot of rewards if we're lucky. But just the navigating the path, because now what's so cool now is like from the Top Chef days to like seeing you on Next Level Chef, where you're like owning it. That I think sometimes people look and they're like, oh, she has it easy. And I know you well enough to know this, and also I want you to speak to sort of people who are coming up into the culinary world about the level of dedication, or the level of like, the times you've heard no, the times it hasn't gone your way, the times you've just said, I'm going to keep doing this anyway because it's in my soul. And no one can speak to that more than you. So I just think, what do you say to those young chefs that are like, just want it served on a platter for them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm so glad you asked that question because it uniquely to my journey, I'm very much one foot in the old school, quote unquote, pan throwing, yelling, very harsh kitchens, and one foot in the new school of like, kumbaya and everything's fine. Like, just praise and like, nothing's wrong. Everything's fine. Which there's value in both, and I think a good mentorship, it's not always about just providing opportunities for people. It's also telling people when they're wrong and when they can grow. Right. And so, I am grateful that I've had a few different mentors in my life, and have worked, extremely hard the entirety of my career, right? And having this relentless pursuit of always leveling up, and intentionally deferring gratification. That's always been something very important to me, growing up. And I want to pay respects to my parents because I think them putting me in team sports, them putting me in martial arts at an early age, helped develop that mindset in particular, discipline, waking up, going to practice or staying after school, running a mile when it was literally the last thing I wanted to do. My grandmother making me read and do, math problems and things when I just want to go play with my friends, and they of course made time for those things. But, they of course as adults saw the value in creating that architecture and framework for my life, so I just had to apply a craft. So it could have been anything, but I'm so freaking grateful that I found something that feels very against the grain. I'm with the current of my life, the peaks, the valleys, the hardship, the days, as you mentioned, where I show up and I smile and I do the mentor things and it looks great. It's for sure not for the faint of heart. You have to really have a strong self base, and and I would say, my best advice, and I can speak particularly to my journey, it's, I think you have to really look at yourself in a vulnerable way and say like, what do I suck at? Right. And what am I really great at? And try to nurture the parts that you're not great at. Like for me, I don't think, at times, like, I think I am like a great cook. I could develop flavors. I can do the things, and I lack the structure. I'm like, I don't love the Excel spreadsheet moments, like I had to find the joy in that, and like look at it like it's a frying pan or something and make a recipe, build these formulas and do the things. But, for me, what I value is the human connection. I value connecting with the product. I value creating these core memories on a plate, and, so I think for me, it was like this journey of like 2019, the catalyst was, I was like, I'm going to remove the things I think aren't serving me. I think too many times I was turning to the glass of wine at night to like calm my nerves after a busy service. I came up in that that was the lifestyle. You work really hard, you stay up late, you sleep in, and you go bang it out the next day, and so years and years and years of that, I was, they compounded, and I thought maybe I'll remove alcohol from my life, so I did that for 8 months and saw the biggest composition, mindset, body change ever, leading into my first ice bath. And I talked about this in my TEDx talk, and that was with you. And being on this roof and first time, just excited about a human experience, and my heart so full and of joy, to try this thing. And I remember when we were going through the breath practice, and I was able to truly tap into, for lack of a better way to articulate this, my cells, like on that micro level, like lean in. And I think only because my body was not processing sugar, not processing any processed food, any alcohol, any coffee, right, that I was able to have this very much out of body experience. And it was interesting. And I've shared this on another podcast prior and in the talk. my brain was so still on this moment of, I pictured myself sitting on top of this peak, and there were like lush rolling green hills, and I was like a drone circling around myself, watching myself. And once I realized the vision I was having, I mean, Kristen, it was like literally deafening silence, but just this elation in my spirit. And it was blissful moment. And once I realized what I was seeing, it was so powerful that I felt like I was like, and like got back in my body. Like I was like, you know, and it's natural. Like that's freaking so powerful, you know? So I think, you know, that really was like the ability to create that through endorphins and dopamine and natural shit. I was like, this is cool, you know? And so...
And it just takes you out of all of the noise.
Very much
for
so.
that short few minutes. And that gives you the otherworldliness or the out-of-body experience or whatever it might be. For some people, it's even like disassociation. Not that we always love to go there, but I remember how you like closed your eyes and you had this moment, and I was like, oh, okay. Like in a way that I felt like, because sometimes I could be like the wordy coach, that I was like, okay, you need to not speak right now and like give some space to this, right? Hold some space for it. But yeah, that the way that it's a disconnection from all the stuff and a moment that people can really like live in. And I see it over and over again, but I remember that time so fondly.
It's a beautiful reset, you know, and I say all that to say, you know, at times when I was, you know, the most like stressed and like looking for ways to like relieve my like fight or flight responses that I was having to moments where I was like, I don't know how to process this. You know, it's all within me, you know, and it's taken time for me to get that. And that comes with age, it comes with life experience, you know, and it's a battle every day, you know. But you get the opportunity to choose your mindset, you know, and I think it's similarly as an entrepreneur, you know, when you're out and you have these great big ideas, and then you think, you know, everyone has great ideas, but it's all in the articulation of the idea, you know. And so, you know, when I'm on TV and, you know, standing and being present for myself, you know, for my team, right? My co-judges, you know, the directors, the executive producers, it's almost, I liken it to being in a kitchen, you know, it's a team sport, you know, and every day's not perfect, but you try to just really show up, and it's challenging. You know, when you think about it, you're thinking about, what are my words? How am I holding my face? Oh, you know, and then I try not to do the thing of go home at night and think, I should have said that, or did I say that correctly? And like, you just, you know, you try to get in a flow state, and it's challenging, you know, and it takes a lot of self editing over years, you know, like I think, you know, for me, I love doing it. So it kind of, I feel like I'm in a good space when I do it.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I look at things from like, I think around Top Chef 2012 was the first time I was like on TV, you know, and I look at myself today on TV, I'm the same girl. Like I haven't changed that much, but I've seen myself, you know, enough to say, oh, I want to do this differently, or like, you know, oh, that's my good side, that's, you know, or whatever. You know, I don't even know. But like, you know, you just get that opportunity to look at yourself in a different mirror, different lens, you know, you get that instant feedback.
Yeah, and sometimes I think the old reflection of you reflects in a way that you're like, oh, there is that part of me. And I think in a younger, I've never been on television to that scale, but there's interesting things about, sometimes we say things and like I've had them even caught on the podcast or someone else's when I'm guesting, maybe even on stage, or I've watched an old film of me presenting at some big conference, and I'm like, oh, I said that, and I believe 80% of that, but like the real Kristen thinks this version of that, right? And it's like not only a growth cultivation, but it is a shift in the way maybe, you know, sometimes we're socialized or things are fed to us, or we're saying the thing that is like the good girl, or like, you know, whatever it might be. Yeah. I wonder if sometimes, if you've seen that evolution in how you are standing on a stage and being with these, I mean, like Gordon Ramsay, what a crazy, it's like so meta, it must be meta in the beginning anyway.
Meta, yeah.
Like,
No, every day, you know, just even about him, like, you know, so.
Because he seemed scary to me, and I think I had a conversation with you at some point, like, you know, just from watching his caricature on television or something, and I had a conversation with you, like, is he scary, or is he like,
He's powerful.
Yeah.
He's very powerful. He's very statuesque. He's tall. He's got muscles. I would say my words about Gordon Ramsay are that the path that I have walked, I say this wholeheartedly, could not have led me to a better point, right? To be able to honorably work next to him is a gift, because I remember specifically, I was on the line in 2005 and I was scrubbing these tables down, and I thought, cool. So this is what my career is going to look like. I think I was like 5 years into my career, and that's when you just start to like, kind of know what you're doing a little bit, and you can start to grow from there. The seeds are starting to little roots, percolating. And I thought, cool, it's going to be a long journey. It's going to be hard. And I remember specifically after a night of service, scrubbing the line down, and I thought, wow, I'm willing to sprint, and I don't know how long the destination is going to be, but I need a North Star. And I looked at all the greats in the industry, and, I respect so many, but I remember specifically when I was doing my due diligence after that night, and I went home and I thought, it's Gordon Ramsay. He's killing it on, in the media, right? As an entertainer, he's killing it in his career. He's worked for amazing chefs. He's got incredible restaurants globally. And, it's kind of when food TV was starting to become a thing, it's was around that time. And so I thought that, and 15 plus years later, like the manifestation came true. And it's like, wow, had I known that, I don't know what would have changed. I don't know how, there was no way of knowing. But like, when I tell you, I mean, that it's an honor. It really is to work next to someone who's so focused and present and professional. And yeah, I mean, his character, I guess, maybe the terms I've heard are like polarizing. I have to say, when I watched him as a viewer, never meeting him, I thought, half the things that he's saying on these programs, I mean, I kind of agree. Yes, the chicken is burned, and the reality is, and that's how I came up.
There's a level of bravery in that, and like saying the thing for what it is, and not worrying about the camera or the person or their, I don't want to say their feelings, because it's like, sure, I think we all try to be kind as we can.
Sure.
But to just say the thing. Yeah. And then the delivery of, there has to be times in your life, I don't know if he's ever exactly like done in the same way, but that you get that delivery and you're like, I need a little tablespoon of sugar with that. And also, thank God someone finally told me the truth. Like,
I'm saying, powerful.
And now you get to do that too for people.
Exactly. The whole like, teach a man to fish, or a woman, and that person will feed themselves for the rest of their life. But if you sugarcoat it and you're like, oh, it's great, when in the actuality it's shit, who gained? So half the time in the programming, watching that coming up, I was like, yeah, makes sense. And the reality is, unfortunately, not only is the dish compromised, but you did it incorrectly, and it's a growth opportunity. But then that product went in the trash. The guest sacrifices. There's an entire domino effect that happens when one of the links is weak, right? So, yeah. And so I got the opportunity to, I think I was talking to you about this before I got on Next Level Chef. I had the opportunity to go on as a guest judge on MasterChef, and that was the first time I really connected. And I tell you, that was the first time I was on a set that was led by a chef, like a proper chef, and it was like, I love this, because it was like, it felt like a kid. It felt like I was a kid again, like being in a kitchen on a line, just those butterflies, those anxious butterflies where you're just like, I'm stoked, like. And I remember making the dish, and I actually didn't know, that we'd worked for the same chef. So I took these inspirations for this dish that I made, and he knew the dish, and it was this ribeye steak roasted with a Robuchon potato. It's a classic potato puree. And, when I cooked that, when I made it, I could feel his energy, because the chefs were watching me make the dish as a demo. As I'm cooking through, demonstrating it for the finalists, I could feel his energy. Like, there's some sort of intangible thoughts and expressions through body language that go into what we do as chefs, how you move, what utensil you choose, what pan what salt. There's so much of this sort of Jedi-esque mindset that goes into the big articulation of the vision, right? Because you dream something up and then you put all your tools and your techniques to work, and then you put it on a plate, and then someone enjoys that and it lives in their soul. It's like a very interesting value exchange. And so, certain people, I say chefs are of a certain particular breed of people in their own, and so, yes, I have the opportunity now to mentor these incredible humans on this show and be a part of this really progressive movement in culinary cooking competitions, because for so long, we saw the same sort of format, but this one is it's exponentially exciting, progressive, unique. It really evens the playing field for where we are in the food landscape, because prior there were only chefs that were really cooking, right?
Yeah.
And now through social media, we see there's so many personalities coming out, products, different ways to share that passion, so we open up the platform. Literally, there's a platform of ingredients and, social media, food stars, entrepreneurs, professional
People are like, I'm
chefs,
self-taught. And
home cooks.
every culinary chef in the world is like, oh my God, I'm rolling over. Wait, what? You're self-taught? How's this going to work?
Right?
And also they have some people have access to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, what are you seeing?
Ginger agrees. She's like, who's knocking? Home cooks. Shit. My mom. No, as you met Amber, home cook.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the show is formatted where there's 3 levels. There's a basement kitchen, a middle level, and a top tier kitchen, similar to a lot of the kitchens I came up in, and that journey, right? I started in these bottom dwelling basement kitchens, peeling potatoes. First restaurant I ever worked in, Giraffe Restaurant in Santa Monica, literally was you go down to the basement and that's where all the prep happens. So when I go to that basement kitchen, with the flickering lights, it takes me back to that early time, just interning and going to culinary school and then going to work service after, right? And you work your way up to these Michelin-starred kitchens where you get the most pristine ingredients and the best equipment. But that sort of, the tiered kitchens levels that out, right? Between the home cooks, the professional chefs, and the sort of social media stars, which is exciting, man. I cannot tell you. It's very rewarding for me because I think at times, I don't know if imposter syndrome is the right word. I wouldn't say that. I think I've worked really hard to get to where I am, and I think I have a wealth of knowledge to share. But I will say I am a chronic student of life, and I prefer, generally speaking, to be on the path and the side of, I'm here, I want to learn, give me something to do. I just am a worker. So to be a judge on a show is very, poised for me. It's a very interesting hat for me to wear. So this is the perfect show for me because I actually get to be in the kitchen with this, and so it gives me.
You're like, my hands are dirty.
Yeah,
Awesome.
let's taste that together. And the most exciting moments in this that fulfill my personal cup, which I'm getting goosebumps and butterflies thinking about now, is getting people to think about these things when some, it's hard. And I've competed in every cooking competition on the planet. And so the Bocuse d'Or and all the things. And so to get these minds and that light bulb goes off in that moment when they're panicking and they're like, chef, taste this, what does it need? I know it's not great. And I ask them, or even they'll say, what does it need? And I go, do you taste it? And they say, I haven't tasted yet. I'm like, let's taste this together. And we taste it. And I say, what do you think it needs? And they say, maybe a little acid. 100%. Yeah. It took you, I'm the doula to get to you to win, Yeah. And so that it lights my soul on fire to get them. And it's so empowering because they take that into the next competition, the next round, and the next challenge. And
and they're building confidence.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So, getting those reps in, thinking about how I can do it better the next time. And it's just data collecting, So I'm grateful to be on this particular program because it is that access of mentorship and also judging, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I have to say, hey, yeah, your chicken is actually raw, and that's not going to get you $250,000,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And someone might get sick.
You know what I mean? Actually not eating this today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, and it's like such a trajectory to see all that. Let's shift a little bit to the ways of wellness.
Yeah.
Just to talk a bit about, food and wellness and the culinary experience and creating and crafting meals that not only feed your soul but feed your food plan, right? Nurture you and fuel you. What are the things that you're doing to try to shift that for yourself, to shift that for when you're cooking for others? Because we may or may not get to I bet you have hundreds of stories now that you've traveled around the world and the globe and doing all these incredible experiential dinners. But just are there ways that you're learning to apply them, or that you've taken and seen that you're learning how to apply the wellness metric to the food and the fuel and all of that?
No, I love that you asked.
It's like biohacking your cuisine,
Oh, I love this. This is a whole new genre.
I know, right?
Food biohacking. Let's go. You heard it here first, folks. No, I'm so glad you asked this, because I'm in a very, how do I say, robust, intentional nutrition plan now, because I am sort of biohacking on my body, like, if I do this, how does this affect it? Okay, I won't even say it's a negative result, right? It's a, whatever, like,
it's a variable. Data collection.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm in that right now.
Yeah.
What happens when I eat legumes? What happens when I eat nuts? What happens if I eat animal protein versus plant protein? Like, all the things, right? So yeah, right now, for the first time ever in my entire freaking life, I'm doing things, probably doesn't sound that exciting, but like weighing my food, actually literally taking notes on what happens if I eat 100 grams of protein a day versus 150, and counting, what are my fats, the macros or whatever, these are things that, like, I never considered as a chef, which has been so freaking eye-opening for me, because, I value the food a lot in a different lens. I'm not just saying, how can I add these salts and fats and make it more robust and delicious? How about if I cook this over live fire? What does that do? Well, it adds another layer of smokiness and experience on your palate that you might not get if you just sauteed it and added butter, and that was kind of a cheat code. Yes, it's delicious. Yeah. We love that, but
butter on anything.
Of course, so it's been really cool to kind of dive into that. So yeah, for the first time, I've been just like weighing out my foods, kind of sticking to a Rolodex, a little tapestry of certain foods, and just seeing if I'm recycling the same, whatever, sweet potato and like skirt steak meal with some veg. And I eat that a couple times a week. Like, I've learned that my body is very receptive to that in terms of like shedding pounds,
some of it based on some of the lab work that you did.
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
Like, hey, here's some allergies or sensitivities.
That was the catalyst for it. Yeah. So I did some food sensitivity tests. I did micronutrient tests, and it started with that 2019 journey. And I'm like, I have gone down this pathway to learn and have this insatiable thirst for knowledge now, because the data is there, and so it's gone in tandem with I'm pretty like fascinated by like the weight training and weightlifting community. We
both share a love of a lot of that. We've like been on the same like dirty outside.
Yes.
10 by 10 square.
Yes. And so I learned, if
cleaning the barbell or whatever.
All of the things. And so being able to do them, requires me to care about what I'm putting in my body, recovery wise, like all the things. So it has, there's that like metaphor, like, a rolling ball gains no moss, so I feel like when I'm rolling the ball with my food, my nutrition, my exercise, it makes me so much better in my professional life, right? Show up on camera a little bit more confident. I show up, I know I've hydrated and drank 100 ounces of water today. So my skin is like, just different things that like basic things you can do for your body that will your future self will thank you for, So I'm very much in that right now. And it's like,
and it could be like meditation or breath or like, who knows, cold, whatever. But it's like the neurochemistry. Your neurochemistry is like literally different And so it can give you a space to say, okay, I'm like really standing on my own. This is like a lot of what I am hearing you talk about too, is this self-actualization thing, right? And it's when you talk about sort of the old kitchens or the old school, where I think to myself, it was like Coke and smoke and yelling and sweat and
Literally
no showers and like all of these things that and I didn't spend a lot of time like on a line in the kitchen. I just would like go in and pick up the food and be like, oh my God, what's going on back
gnarly
here?
sailor ship. Yeah,
Absolutely. And so that again, like you said, the roots of that there's still some important roots in there. There's still some like, there was a level of clarity, it seemed to me, in the kitchen that anyone was called out on their bullshit, and probably not always in the nicest way, or they were like fired or whatever. But there's that coupled with what's going on now. And I just think, are we building this level of wellness into our kitchens? Is there enough knowledge starting to bubble up in the culinary world where people are going, okay, I'm drinking, because I want to, it's not like just at my dad's restaurant, but people would have it was like a container in the back with a knife hole with the straw that was like vodka Coke. Like, so is that changing? Like, is that, I'd like to believe it is, but I mean, are we starting to see that bubble up, or people are doing things that are a bit more in this wellness landscape? I don't know. You go in the cold box and someone's like, oh, I need 5 minutes to meditate or take a moment.
It. Oh, I love
is that
it.
happening? Or
no, you're absolutely right. It was the drugs and alcohol, and I think it was, we didn't have the tools. We didn't make time to stretch before pre-shift, and and have these. I think you know what it is, Kristen. I think in the macro lens, it's a conversation around vulnerability. I think like we were always taught to just be like, I'm so strong, I can take anything, but really you're just numb and you're taking it. The mental, the verbal, physical abuse, because you've like conditioned yourself enough now to not feel things, and it's like, I think now even the world, is just having and prioritizing more mental health conversations, and going down these like biohacking conversations and checking things out internally. And I think it's probably popping up in a lot of different industries, but yeah, I think for sure the food space has had a reckoning. Because we've lost too many greats. Yeah, absolutely.
And then the global travel landscape, is there a place that you've been that you're like, damn, they're really like cutting a rug on like fresh, clean, and super healthy in this country? Is there?
I feel like every single place I've been to outside of the U.S.
No, wrist slap, United States of America. Let's get our shit together.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, France, come on. Yeah, no, I think everywhere, I'm not hating on U.S. I just think it's hard. When people think about U.S. cuisine, it's like, processed foods, chemicals, all things, PFAS. And like, I think the things that have stood out to me, and, it's not a reality that we can live like this every day. Maybe it is, but specifically, a few moments that have stuck out was when I went to Morocco, and my soul was just so at peace in this moment of being able to go to visit this family in the Ourika Valley, and they had fashioned their own home on this mountaintop. They literally made the clay, got sticks, had these beautiful tapestries, and I have these images of these like flowing tapestries of like, these posts that you could just tell it was all handmade, and as we were trekking up, donkeys coming down, holding, the load that, where other farmers had like farmed the land, and like that was the means of transportation were these donkeys, going to this family's home where there was zero stainless steel, going to the kitchen where it's like I'm like literally in a cave, and there's like, live fire burning and these like clay stoves. And I watched this salt to the earth, beautiful, weathered faced woman making this beautiful bread, just sticking her hand directly into the fire and like over and over. And it was so smoky. And like, I'm a chef. I'm like being able to take it. I've been worked over grills. And it's just funny. I was traveling with a group and half of them couldn't hang in there. This woman was there just not just, this is what my life is, happy to do it, and the matriarch of the family. And I watched her and we didn't speak the same language, but her daughter kind of like in the broken English that she could understand, I explained to her I'd love to relieve her and have her tap out and I'll take over. And the daughter kind of told her, and then they had to like chuckle and kind of laugh. They're like, oh, okay, yeah,
the
like
American.
totally is not going to be able to do this. Finally, she like let me, and I sat, and she like corrected me a couple ways on my form, and then I was banging him out, and she told her daughter like, I'm very impressed with her, and she didn't know I was a chef, but those moments, and I'm sitting on a little stool like in front of this roaring fire, and doing the things, and just tears coming out of my eye, face probably black with smoke, like clothes like just permeated with smoke. And we essentially what we were doing was cooking this meal, right? And the chickens that they were grown on the farm, the vegetables were grown on the farm, but I just remember everything just feeling so simple, no electricity in this place, all candlelit, everything, like it's just a different way to like have that hunter-gatherer mentality, setting our circadian rhythm, like getting out, knowing that you have to get up early because you have to preserve sunlight, right? Not being like, oh, I get to turn on a light, like,
Yeah.
So I value to be able those moments where I got to slow down a bit and just, take deeper breaths and have that intentionality and connect with a different part of the world, in this very old world mindset, no cell phones, nothing like that. And it was one of the most memorable core experiences I've had. I think also Bali, going to Ubud with such, I don't think I cried more ever than when I went to Bali. Like just such a spiritual explosion. Like everything is sacred, everything is just so like cared for and just beautiful. And I ate a lot of not a lot of animals while I was there, just mostly, plant proteins and different legumes and vegetables, and just everything was so delicious, So I would say, but I could seriously pick something beautiful about every place
you've been.
Literally.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
thinking,
like so fortunate that you get to go see
I'm
all these
super grateful.
these cultures and take a bit back and
super grateful because
I
I feel like
you learn on every trip.
I couldn't have said it better. I think being able, and it's taken me an entire 22 years of cooking professionally to learn that is my big expression, to be able to go to a new place, go to a new land, learn a technique, learn about an ingredient, and add it to my tapestry, right? And I don't have to be put in a box. I don't have to follow the standard pathway of what it is to be a chef who has a platform and say, I only cook California coastal cuisine. No, actually, I enjoy learning about Shadow Benny from when I lived in the Caribbean, and being able to grow it and learn how to use it well, learning delicious ingredients from the people in Belize, and the robust like stories that island has to tell, and like, and making my own unique cooking style, but also leaning into that, not being fearful of that and saying, I'm everything and nothing, like I am of the world, I'm not just this.
Like all of the energy.
But absolutely. Yeah. I harness it, take it and share it as that is me, and it's taken me a long time to like learn that because I have an artist brain. I'm very right brain. I'm very like, I love it, and like, so it makes sense that like, I never stuck to like, just, I am this, but I did want to learn fine dining, 3-star Michelin restaurants to cook. What is it like to cook this elite level, right? What is it like to go to the world stage of the Bocuse d'Or and like, watch these amazing competitors split seconds and learn how to, have these amazing, competitive environments. And what is it like to go to Hawaii and consult in a restaurant and cook tacos on the beach for a year?
Yeah.
We'll see how that feels, And I think, and we said at the top is like, it's about those experiences that make it, your own unique self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing you say a lot, or just the undercurrent of a lot of this, it like gets me so titillated is that it's like a communication thing, right? It's like my mom, let's go back to my mom. My mom's getting more airtime than she's ever gotten before.
Aw.
had a little, like a tiny little sign, like, you know, cheap and cheerful sign that was like, she bought at some little, you know, trinket store that said, all people smile in the same language. And it's just like a sweet thing. But I think more and more as you're talking, like what resonates with me is like, it's almost like all people are like cooking in the same language.
Yes.
And the way that, from the story about me having all these Vietnamese around and like family and cultures to you being, you know, over in a cave where you're like, no, we don't really all speak the same language, but we're like, they're doing it. It's like the level of communication I think that happens in and around the kitchen, and what I see you communicating with the way that you put dishes together and the way that you know, it's a curated dance and the way you move, like you
Very
said,
much so.
that it's really about sharing stories. If body language is 80% of it and our words are less, then like how you're sharing stories with food and how people are sharing stories with you through the cuisine is just like, that makes me feel like
deep.
People are all cooking in the same language.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
it's a way to, you know, different styles and different strokes. And also it's a way to share a story that maybe you can't verbally easily share. Because even when we have the words, right? Sometimes it's like, there was one time that you know, on this, I have a food menu, like a meal plan menu that I share with a lot of my clients, and some people will, you know, download and get and whatever. And there's a dish on there that's like Nyesha's chicken. And I remember that I was like, was it even like, it must have been in COVID. We're like, well, Instagram and I'm cooking it and you're cooking it in our own kitchens, but at the same time.
Yes.
And I felt like it was, talk about a mentorship, because it's like, I don't really cook complicated meals at home. Like I do like to cook a lot, but we made that.
Wow.
We made that dish. And then I remember at the end being like, damn, these came out good. It was like Meyer lemon. It was like new things that I was like, okay, cool. I got a little zhuzh, a little extra. I had never cooked with like, was it wild rice?
Yes.
And it was like smoked tomato paste or smoked paprika and tomato. Like I remember the ingredients so much because I was like, oh, these are not things I would have ever known to pick, because I don't have any skill or background in this or with these ingredients. And that's like, we didn't have to talk, you know, you showed me a way to cook that meal. It came out so good. I nourished myself with it. And then like that story like continues and it's like, you told me that. So like, so incredible.
I love that. Recipes, they're like our little like pins in time, you know, and I say, I feel like they're like a bridge to the past, but they're also like such opportunities to have this like gateway into the future. Like we created that. You know, we're here years later talking about this story. And when you mentioned that, it took me right back there to that moment. So cool. Yeah. So powerful.
Yeah. It's like a big memory, a spark of memories.
Yes.
So good.
Absolutely.
I love you. I want to talk a bit about biohacking and you and what you're loving and just a little bit of that landscape. Like what things are you doing? What have you added? What health and wellness practices or optimization things are you like, hell yeah? Because we've gotten a little taste, but I'd love to sort of close on getting some insight from you.
Well, a few of my things that have helped me the most is having access to the data. So, you know, I wear the wearable, I wear my Oura ring every day. It tells me how is my recovery? What's my heart rate like? You know, am I hydrated? You know, what was my sleep quality? Not even how many hours of time were you in bed, but how much deep sleep did I get? Right. So having that data sets me up for the day. Right. If I feel a little bit off, I know why, you know? So I think, you know, that's been an amazing tool for me to have, and I'm an ambassador for them. So if anyone wants a code, I got you. And so, you know, that is a huge one. I strength train or do some sort of training output, whether that's yoga, generally hot yoga, lots of walking every day. I move my body every single day. It's just part of my lifestyle. Because I want to be able to do that for when I'm older. You know, what else? I do my baseline blood work pretty regularly. I learn which vitamins I'm deficient in, so I know how to supplement myself properly. You know, I think those basic things are my general practices. I'm lots of hot and cold exposure. I haven't, in full transparency, been directly in the ice in a minute, but I've been doing a lot of cryo, just because I know I want cold exposure, so I try to get it in the ways that I can just
a little time efficient.
You know what I mean? Because I feel like
sometimes
if I'm going in the
like,
ice,
oh, Kristen's here. It's the ice bath confessional.
Yeah,
people are like,
Yeah.
I went to cryo.
Right.
And I'm like,
Exactly.
it's totally great. Get it how you can.
Right,
It
right.
takes a long time to like either fill the ice, rig it up,
Yeah,
get your clothes off,
exactly.
get in,
It's
get out, dry, redo your hairdo,
That's
like all that shit. It's
exactly.
like a lot.
We'll save that for a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, totally,
Tuesday,
totally.
she's got meetings. She's jumping in cryo.
Yeah.
So I've been all about saunas and cryo. Those are, the things that I think have been very beneficial for me. I'd say those are my top
yeah, it's awesome.
kind of things.
They're awesome. And also
red light,
like the thing that is so amazing that you're talking about, these things are, it's what a lot of people are getting wrong. Like, and I guess wrong is a harsh word, right? But they're missing, right? And that is lab work. It's invaluable. There are times in the year that you're a medical practitioner, you're a functional medicine person, or if you are not insured, there are times of the year that they run deals. Like some of these labs will be like, we're doing a half-off thing, home testing. That goes on. There's ways to cut the corners and find the deals and navigate your year so you can get some lab work. It is so valuable to get that insight. And many times people will show up in my one-on-one client work intake form being like, here's all the supplements and all the things and everything I'm doing. And I'm like, based on what? A blog you read and your girlfriend who has success with a thing. Not to say it can't work for you, but we don't have a good baseline
unique
there.
to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the other piece is like weight training.
Yes.
Because you're like a strong, powerful, famous woman.
Oh my gosh.
What a platform to be able to remind people, like whether it's Olympic lifting or you did strongman or like any of the things that it's like that we're picking up heavy shit.
Yeah. Very important. And the thing is,
and it's empowering, right?
Girl,
like
that's what I was just about to say.
Yeah.
It's not even about, like I'm out here lifting weights. It's not even, it's like, when I pick up my dog, I'm like, I know when to breathe and brace and how to do this. And it's effortless, because you've done it, right? It's 20 pounds. You do it in the gym. And it's those are the things that keep us alive a lot longer, Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to stand in a room and like, before I'm going to like make love to my partner, I want to stand in a room and be like, that's right. I'm standing here in my undies, or I feel confident, or like, I can't imagine what it's like to have a camera on you as much as you have a camera. It's like, whether we like it or not, right? We are our own worst critics sometimes, but it's like the beauty of the self-love that I know that you continue to work on and bring.
Work on it every day, yeah.
Yeah, and then like all of the camera and all those people and all the people in your social, like it's like lift some weights to be able to handle the trolls. Like,
very
is
much
that
so.
a real thing?
It is
what?
a real thing. Yeah, because and I've learned this, and I actually talked with Gordon about this. He gave me great advice. And not everyone's gonna see and understand your message, and it's as a self-proclaimed, I like when people, I wouldn't say I'm a people pleaser, but like I'm not like trying to like ruffle feathers, like it's just not I'm not wired that way.
Yeah.
Like I'm not the loudest voice in the room, and it took me some time to be like, well, that person doesn't agree with that, and that's okay,
Yeah.
That's okay. Like, instead of being like, oh, why not? Like, wow, I thought I did that really great, So it's just a different journey, and
and sometimes you're like, I just cleaned 125 pounds. I'll punch that guy in the face.
I
Not
mean,
that you would, but just you could.
Yeah. Yeah. It cracks me up. Oh, that cracks me up. Like the comments, like sometimes I'll post things on my Instagram stories and stuff. It's always the men. They're like, oh, be careful, sweetheart. Oh, that's a lot of weight for you. Like, and I'm like, get out of here. I guarantee you could barely pick this barbell up.
That's awesome.
I love it. Yeah, I did my first fitness competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a team thing. It was like 3 teams of 2 ladies. And wow, what a challenge. And the training and just the camaraderie that was built around getting out there, and it was so cool. It was very challenging. I was surprised myself. I was very nervous going into it. I had like weight goals of like things I wanted to lift. And
do you think you were more nervous because you were wanting to make the lifts, or because you're like had a team, you had a partner, right?
Because of the partner.
It's so interesting how that happens, right? You're like, I just want to show up for my person.
100%.
Right?
And in the sessions that we had leading up, I knew. I was like, shout out to Jessie. I was like, it was such an incredible dynamic that we built, and like playing off each other's strengths. And like she grew up in sports as well, and just like, I think also the pressure of performing in front of people, like that energy exchange in itself and the palpability in the room it's intense, so I was very proud of myself also, because I leading up, prioritized nutrition, prioritized my sleep, I trained properly. I didn't overtrain. Days before I rested, I just rested, didn't lift a weight, and then day of, I lifted more than the goal that I set, smashed it, and of course there's like journaling bits and things, but you want to show the fuck up for your team, excuse my language. It's just so powerful. And it was just such a cool thing,
Yeah, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap our time, but I have one question that I want to ask you, which is when you go back and you talk back in time, if you could get in a time machine and you go back to Nyesha making soup in the kitchen for her friends, and you could just say one solid piece of advice to her that might even translate to someone who's like listening, getting to know you, nervous about a career, but has a big passion like you do in the world of let's call it culinary arts.
Yeah, I love that.
What do you say to that younger version of yourself that's like going to help them step into life in the biggest, most bold way?
Yeah, I would say to that person to not be afraid to stand up for herself. I think too often in the past, I would try to seek approval of other people, right? As opposed to standing strong and, inside of you what your power is, and I think I would give my power away a lot, So I think over time, I learned how to stand in that, and I think that's something I could have learned and told that 9-year-old girl making that soup with big visions and a big heart, just to give herself some grace around that. It would be a very powerful message as my voice quivers, because it's like just so, it's such a it's so personal, and you don't know until you live through your life, right? And you're like, oh, like not everyone has your best interest.
You're like, wait a minute, I thought we were on the same team.
Yeah, it's hard.
Beautiful.
But yeah, I'm here for the human experience. I'm grateful. This has been another one of these amazing connection points in human experience, and I'm honored to be here. So thank you very much for having me.
Of course.
And Blue Ginger.
And Blue Ginger. Such a shout out to Blue Ginger. You got all the noises and a little nap time right now. I love you so much, girl.
Love you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.